Alright guys, I will be reading Be Not Far From Me, Day 7 and Day 8. I open my eyes, and the first thing I think is, this is the day that the Lord has made, followed by the answer, let us rejoice and be glad in it. It's so funny I could puke, but there's nothing in my stomach. They taught us all kinds of stuff at Camp Little Fish, but that one kind of stuck, mostly because I was the only camper there on what they called a scholarship instead of charity. But the other kids would say this, eyes big and bright over breakfast, like maybe they were happy about something I didn't understand. I still don't understand. What I can say is that while I'm not exactly glad right now and rejoicing is off the table, I also don't feel like I'm dying. I sit up, expecting a wave of blackness in my vision or a revolt in my gut, but I get neither. I'm lightheaded and weak, with nothing but opioids and alcohol in my system. I'm still in a camper with more of my blood on the floor than inside me, and part of my body in a sandwich bag, but weirdly, I feel okay. Huh, I say, which is the best kind of thanks I can manage right now. What's left of my foot looks better, the red lines receding for sure. The bleeding has stopped, and the flesh from where I amputated looks healthy and pink. The bone nubs sticking out are cut cleanly, a small miracle. I start unraveling Davey Beets' hat. I don't want to, and it hurts my heart more than a little when I pick out the knot at the crown that his mom tucked in when she finished it. I pull it through and bite it off, the yarn coming loose and free, tightly kinked from years of being a hat, soaked in the rain, snow, Davy's sweat, and my tears. I take it down about an inch, which gives me a decent length of yarn. I bite it off again, retying a knot and putting Davy's hat back on, the top of my head now poking through it. I slip a sandwich bag over my hurt foot and push open the door to the camper. It's a beautiful day, and I could almost rejoice and be glad in it if I had more than dandelions to eat. I chew for a bit before I swallow like a cow with cud. Making my way down to the water isn't easy, but I manage. The Erlenmeyer flask bumping against my side from where I tied it to my belt loop with a bit of yarn. I fill it up at the stream, drink good, and fill it again. I strip down and clean myself as best I can, my clothes too. I'm resting on the bank, stark naked, the sun warming me and actually feeling a little decent. Nice things haven't been all that easy to come by in my life, but I do have one or two good memories, like the time a lifeguard taught me to swim at the public pool, or when I was 10 and Duke's older brother Wayne kicked the shit out of a sixth grader for trying to pull me under the tube slide for a kiss during recess. I took another oxy before I came down to the water, and I'm all messed up again in my head. Every thought seems connected to the next, cascading one to the other without pause. It's like pulling weeds after a good rain, each one bringing up more earth than you bargained for and leaving a hole behind. Wayne showed me how to make a fist that day on the playground and offered to let me throw a punch at him just so I'd know how it feels. I took him up on it, and he walked away with a bloody mouth, but he was smiling, and it was probably the best recess I ever had. I wonder what he'd think now that I used the same fist to break his brother's nose, whether he'd tell me I lost my shit or offer to hold Duke while I took a second shot. There it is now, and I can't ignore it. I pulled on that particular weed, and it came up, root system and all, and I've got a big gaping hole to stare at and figure out what I'm going to fill it with. I've got two options, forgiveness or anger. I can't act like I don't care, the way Kavita has always been able to do about Jason. Something inside of me burns too strong and too deep. It doesn't help that everything I feel shows on my face. Meredith has always been better at making her face do what it's supposed to do, so maybe it's her I should have been teaching me things on the playground instead of Wayne. I don't know, but I've still got this hole to consider, and I can just about do what Davey Beet and Jesus and everyone at Camp Little Fish wants me to do, which is forgive Duke for cheating on me. Then I think about those words, cheated on me, and I get angry again, my gut burning hotter than my foot. When I found him with Natalie, it felt like neither one of us could do anything other than cry. But I've had time to think, and I've got words to say now, lots of them. Some are bad and most are mean, but the one that keeps popping up and wants to be said is why. Why do you have to go and do that? Why wasn't I enough? Why can't a nice thing stay that way? When his brother Wayne got shot in the ass for banging Kate Fullerton, we all laughed about it. Wayne was laid out on the sofa in the front room with a bandage on his ass, a bottle of whiskey going between him and me and Duke. Wayne was telling it like it was a funny story, not like he'd just been shot and warned off a girl he'd been in love with. I was laughing because I thought I was supposed to, the whole time thinking, how is this the same guy who punched a boy for trying to kiss me? Maybe time changed Wayne, or maybe all boys are one way to their girls and a different way with everyone else. Maybe Duke tells stories about me to the other guys when I'm not around. Maybe seeing Natalie made him remember how they had a nice thing going too, until he passed her up for me. Maybe I didn't know him as well as I thought, and maybe he heard me say Davy Beets' name one too many times. I don't know. One thing I do know is that Kate Fullerton got a dog out of that whole mess. Her family said she had some kind of stress disorder after seeing her dad put a load of shot in Wayne's ass, and insurance paid for her to get a therapy dog. She took it to school and everything, and and got to pet it whenever she was feeling sad, and all I could think of was I wanted a dog my whole life, and we never could afford one. Maybe I'll get a therapy dog out of this whole mess. Good thing I don't have one now, though, because I'd eat it. When Kavita moved here from the suburbs, she didn't understand about hunting. She thought it was about killing things, so I showed her otherwise. When I invited her to come with me, she'd given me a funny kind of side eye, but must have thought it was something like a dare, so she agreed. I got an even funnier look when we started hiking out to the woods and I didn't have a gun. You're fast, she said, but you can't tell me you're going to run down a deer and kill it with your bare hands. I just gave her a smile, and she seemed to think about it for a second, and she added, then again, maybe it wouldn't be all that surprising. I helped Kavita up into the stand I had in the woods, and settled myself into Duke's up in a tree a few yards away. Then we did the hard part of hunting, together. So what's going on? She asked me after about maybe 5 minutes. What are we doing out here? Hunting, I told her. This is the part where you wait, and you watch. I don't take a gun with me until I know there'll be something to shoot at, and I only shoot at something I'm going to eat. She came out with me 3 more times until I spotted the deer I wanted. I don't trophy hunt. We can't afford to taxidermy anything, so I kill for meat and not antlers. I found a doe I liked, and I let her know which one it would be. Kavita didn't come with me the next time, and I get that. Watching things die isn't easy. Neither is killing them. I don't have days to wait and watch and plan. I told myself I was putting some distance between me and the camper in the morning, and I will. But there's got to be something more in my stomach than plants if I'm going to have the strength to do it. I don't know these woods and these paths these animals take. I can't go to them, so instead I've got to bring them to me. I've only got one thing to lure them with, and that's my own rotting foot. I find a good clearing not too far from the camper just as the sun was going down, a chill rising in the air. I toss the bit of foot out of my bag and settle in nearby, hoping it's something small that counts, something I can clobber with my walking stick. It's a possum that shows up, of course, its long snake-like tail twitching back and forth as it scents the air. I got lucky and it came into the clearing from upwind, the smell of my lure way stronger than anything I'm giving off. It settles in, snacking on my toes like it's a bag of chips, and while I'm thrilled my plan is working, I didn't prep myself for watching something eat my foot. I'm all right when it takes an experimental bite. I even hang in there when it pulls off a shred of my skin. It's the snap of my bone cracking underneath its teeth that sends me across the clearing, walking stick in hand, ready to bash its brains in. I move as fast as I can, swinging wide as soon as the possum is in reach. I get it in the side and it goes sprawling, spitting out one of my toes and a surprised bark along with it. I'm screwed because I missed what I was aiming for, the head. It's not stunned and it's going to bolt. The caterwaul it just made, scaring off anything that might have been coming to investigate. Everything's lost, and I just fed my foot to a wild animal for no good reason because it got what it came for, and now it's going to make a run for it. But it doesn't. Instead, the possum gets up and rounds on me, backs up, showing its teeth. That's when I spot the babies. They're lined up at the edge of the clearing, waiting for the mama's permission to come in and have some of what she found. Then I showed up and whacked her a good one. She's going to fight me rather than run and leave her babies behind. It's so goddamn sad I can't take it. But I also can't die out here, so I'm crying when I take the next swing, right to the side of her skull. The mama goes flying, still spitting and doing her best to keep my attention on her and leave her babies alone. She gets back up, coming at me with what she's got left, and I cave in her head with the last stump that should send her babies running, but they don't. They stand there, looking at me. I just killed their mama right in front of them, and they're so young they don't even know to run from me. I'm the scariest thing they'll ever see in their life, a wild woman with their mama's blood splattered on her face, and all they can do is stare at me, shocked. There's another part of me that knows they're an easy kill and fresh meat. Get out of here, I scream before I change my mind. I drop my stick and charge so that they scatter, their tails the last thing I see as they disappear into the night. I taught them that there's nothing worse than humans. And while I learned it young myself, I didn't ever want to have to be the one bearing the message. I grab my kill, and for a second of a thought, I pick up what's left of my foot and stick it in the bag. I can't give a good reason other than I keep thinking about the deer skull I found by the trail on the way in, flesh long since rotted into the ground underneath. I love the woods, more than a roof over my head. But damn if it can have me, but damn if it can have me even a little bit. I tear some tin off the side of the camper, careful not to slice a finger off in the process. My fire starts easy. Another burn hole added to my fireboard. I strike off a piece of flint with a good edge and skin the possum, taking away every last thing that will cook up. The meat sizzles on the tin as it warms next to the fire, and in all my life I've never smelled anything so wonderful. I have meat, and it helps with the guilt. Taking down a deer was never easy for me, but knowing that it would get us through the winter without having to pay for grocery meat was what made my finger pull the trigger. The methodical business of butchering takes concentration, and busy hands don't allow for an idle mind. I don't think of the motherless babies in the woods when I take my first bite of real food in the week. All I think is how damn good it is to eat again. I take it slow, letting the pain pass in my stomach and the business of digestion begin before I eat a second strip of meat, my foot resting on the steps of the camper. The sun is edging into the sky by the time I've cooked up everything and sealed it all away in baggies, making a tiny hole above the ceiling line with the tip of my flint and stringing yarn through them. It's time to go, and I'm ready. I've scoured around the trailer looking for any sign, a hint of a trail that they used to come and go, but there's nothing. A smart person would come a different way every time, letting new growth fill in what they trampled. A really smart person would leave by a different route, too. And I seem to have crossed paths with the smartest drug dealer in the county, as luck would have it. I think of Uncle Chuck, beaten unconscious beside his burned-out trailer. A harsh warning was to leave off what he was doing. There's a chance whoever set up this ended up the same, or worse off. Or maybe they sampled too much of their own product and their return is permanently delayed, the woods filling in all signs of their passage. Or maybe I've been enjoying the hospitality of the same person who smashed in Chuck's face and won't take too kindly to me drinking all their whiskey. I just don't know. I pocket 3 oxys, enough to take the edge off, and I'll need it in the coming days, but not to the point of making me funny in the head. The whiskey is gone, so I rinse out the bottle and thread yarn through the handle, tying it through a belt loop of my jeans. I'm still lame enough to need the walking stick, and I can't carry the blanket easily, so I tie the edges around my neck, a moldy cape. I tuck the slice of flint into my waistband, and I get my bad foot into the sling. I put what's left of the possum on the meth lab counter to rot, because fuck them. Today, I'm going to walk until I see something left behind by another human being. I can't set a distance goal because this is day 8, by the way. Sorry. And my nose really itches. I don't know what's going on. Day 8. Today I'm going to walk until I see something left behind by another human being. I can't set a distance goal because each step takes as much energy as a mile would on a normal day. My body is taking a beating that makes me feel like I'm covering more distance than I am. But when I take an oxy for the pain, everything gets fuzzy. Not just the pain, but also time and any sense of distance that I've covered. So instead, I say I'm going to move until I find evidence of someone else, something to tell me that I'm close enough to civilization that a person has passed through. Even if it's litter tossed aside from whoever is operating out of that camper, at least I'll know I'm following in their footsteps. And those will lead me out of the woods. Unnatural things always turned my gut a bit, like the plastic wrappers I find along the trail, or a ball of fishing line left behind in a tangle that couldn't be undone. But I'd give my good foot to see something that means another person was out here not too long ago, or a flash of neon from a power walker that would lead me to the trail. Right now, I'm the foreign object, the trespasser. Everything from the elastic in my bra to the baggies hanging from my belt loops declaring me unnatural. My mind has been wandering because maybe my legs aren't doing a great job of it themselves. The meat is helping, but I'm not in fighting shape, and my foot feels like I stuck it in a blender, then an oven. I stop again, take my foot out of the sling, and slide the sandwich bag off to inspect it. It's still puffed up like a cat taking on a pack of dogs, but the redness is gone. I pull open a bag and I eat some more possum, well aware that what I've got will go bad in a few days. I eat everything in that pouch, and I wash it down with whiskey-tinged water. I'm 2 shuffling steps away from the big beach I was leaning on when I turn to check that I didn't leave anything behind, because damn if I'm going to be the only person out here and a litterer. And there, right above where I had been sitting, is the proof I've been looking for that another human being passed this way, etched into the bark of a tree. Davey Beets was here. I saw Davey Beet before he went missing. We ran into each other at a gas station. He was going out as I was coming in and held the door for me, then did a double take when he recognized me. I'd been too terrified to say a word, but when I heard a tentative ass kicker, I turned around quicker than the weather vane in a storm. I was 15 then. I had just gotten my permit and took any excuse to drive, like running into the gas station for a gallon of milk, even though there was at least 2 inches left in the one we had. Davy was 20, 3 months from disappearing and working for a landscaping company. He was tan and fit, hair a little long and curling from underneath his baseball hat. I could tell he didn't quite know what to think of me or where to look. My body had filled out that summer, and Meredith had taught me what to wear to show it off. It wasn't so bad that Dad wouldn't let me leave the house, but my cleavage cast a shadow, and I had legs up to my shoulder blades. I hadn't minded the attention I was getting, but I hadn't liked it until that moment. "Hey, Davy," I said, leaving behind the blast of air conditioning from the gas station and letting the door swing shut behind me. "What have you been up to?" Not much, it turned out, but all of it was still fascinating because it happened to Davy Beets, and because it was him standing there telling me about it, like maybe he was trying to impress me just a little bit. "So what's up with you?" he asked, and I told him about getting my permit, kind of leaning hard on the fact that I could go anywhere I wanted now and didn't have a curfew. Technically, I was supposed to have an adult in the car with me, but I didn't know too many of those, and Dad was pulling double shifts. Davy kept nodding, and I don't think I'm flattering myself to say that there was a pause when I think maybe he was going to ask me for my number or see if I wanted to hang out sometime. I was holding my breath, heat coming back up off the asphalt and baking me, mouth drier than it's ever been, even now. Maybe Davey did the math in that moment, remembering I was only 15. Davey Beet was being a good guy when he let that moment pass, and damn if I didn't wish he would have gone ahead and been questionable just that one time. His buddy yelled at him from the landscaping truck, and he said it was nice talking to me, but he better get back to work. And then Davey walked away, turning back to say something I've carried with me forever. "You did a good job growing up, ass kicker," he called. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Maybe if I'd been a little older or surer of myself, I would have asked him out instead of waiting for him to ask me. Maybe he would have said no, but call me when you're 18. Maybe that little bit of something I saw in his eyes might have grown into something else, and maybe he wouldn't have gone into the woods when another girl broke his heart. And maybe I wouldn't be standing here right now, staring at the words written by someone who never came back and was never found. I go until I can't go no more. It's not pain or hunger that stops me, but pure exhaustion. There's nothing left inside of me but tired when I fall under a big maple and I can't get back up again. I lie still, slipping my foot out of the sling and rolling onto my back so that I can look up at the canopy and the bits of darkening sky in between. It's evening, frogs are singing, and the light has that special kind of tint to it that used to make me want to go outside and stay there, which is pretty funny to me now. I might have left Davey Beets' name behind me on that tree, but it's burned onto my eyes, and all I can think about as I stare is that my mind has spent so much time thinking about Davey that now somehow I'm following him. It's a crazy thought, and yes, I did pop an oxy when I refilled my whiskey bottle, that last bit of running water I found, but I'm not sure it would have occurred to me even without the drugs. Davey's always been a safe place to return to, a what-if that kept me going through bad fights with Duke and rough patches at home. Like the time I told Dad that maybe if we didn't live in a trailer, I'd bring friends over more often. I'm embarrassed thinking about that, even out here. It's one of those moments that'll dog me for the rest of my life, like the first time I was invited to a birthday party and was the only kid who showed up without a present, or when Kate Fullerton recognized the shirt I was wearing because it used to be hers and she gave it to the Goodwill. Shame burns over time, leaving behind a scar that puckers up and shines so it can't ever be quite forgotten. It happened after I started driving, and Dad made the comment that I've been making myself so scarce that he might start calling me Wendy, my mama's name, and I don't know if it was his timing or the fact that it was just a bad thing to say to a motherless girl, but I lit into him like it was the 4th of July, and he had a fuse sticking out. I told him maybe I'd stay home more if there was something better to eat other than venison and mac and cheese. I said maybe I'd spend more time with him if we actually played catch instead of watching baseball on TV, or maybe I'd even bring friends over to our place instead of going to theirs if it didn't risk them seeing him running around his tighty-whities, beer gut hanging out over them, while he made the trip to the fridge for the next one. I said all those things to the person who raised me, the parent who stayed, the one who fed me and dressed me and read me books every night and made high-pitched voices for the girl characters. And every word I said cut him deep, down through the skin and bone and biting into the soul. I watched it happen, and I kept going, saying all the bad things I could think of until he shoved open the screen door and told me to leave if things were so bad. But he cracked it open so hard, it snapped right off in his hand, leaving him holding a door with no hinges, owner of the house with no proper entrance. His face just kind of fell, like the world had ganged up on him in the form of his daughter in his own home. I was pissed, too, at our trailer for being so shitty, at the door for falling off right then, even if all it did was prove my point. I didn't need fate on my side to illustrate how bad off we were, so I took the door and I threw it out in the front yard and I stomped on it until my feet went through the screen and the metal frame was bent to hell. It wasn't the smartest thing I ever did, but it felt good. And after that, Dad and I went to the hardware store, we got a new door, and we put it on together and had some beer and watched a ball game. We didn't talk about the fight, just slipped into our old routines and did them like always, working together without saying much, knowing what the other one was going to do or what tool they needed without words. Dad and I were always like that, not needing to talk to communicate. As I watched the light fade out of the sky, I wonder if he could hear me now if I told him I love him, and that I'm sorry about all that and all this too. I wonder if he's watching a baseball game right now, or how many beers he's had, or if the door is slapping in the wind that's kicking up because he managed to fuck up the whole door frame when he tore it off. The truth is, I miss my shitty house, and not just for the shelter. It's home, and it has someone in it who loves me. I tried going to church for a bit. The memories get into my head because I'm looking up the maple branches, and there's a spot where one overlaps another, and damn if I didn't lie down with a cross right above my head. Dad always said there were enough people in his life asking him to be grateful for this or that, and forgiveness didn't come easy when his days were mostly filled with people doing him wrong, like the guy who took his overtime shift when we were in the kind of tight spot that meant the electric might get shut off. But he didn't care if I went, and Camp Little Fish was associated with some sort of Methodist group, so I ended up displaying enough interest in the second summer I was there to get involved in a carpool. There was a nice lady that came to get me every Sunday morning, her own kids in the back with their shirts buttoned up and their nylons tied on their legs like sausage skins. I didn't have anything of the sort, so I just wore clean jeans and a t-shirt that didn't have bad words on it, and nobody seemed to think sideways of it. True, people from church did start giving me bags of clothes, along with casual comments like it was spring cleaning time, or it didn't fit their daughter anymore, and would save them the bother of doing the garage sale if I took it. I didn't mind so much because they weren't ever giving me silly dresses or stuff that I couldn't get a wear out of. One guy even gave me what he claimed was his son's old hiking boots. But if they were used, then his son never set foot outside because they smelled like fresh rubber and fit snug like they just came out of a box. The people there were nice enough, and I never once felt talked down to or lorded over. It's funny to think about having too much pride when you're gnawing on a possum leg, but maybe that's what my issue was in the end, because after a while I started to feel the weight of those clothes on my back, every friendship I made a debt that was owed. Also, I tried to put on a pair of pantyhose, and it didn't go too well. Someone gave me a pair, along with a jean skirt that I figured I could wear without feeling too awkward since it was denim after all. But the pantyhose were giving me problems that morning. I'd never had a pair on in my life, and I didn't know a thing about all the picking and pulling and shimmying. Meredith taught me those things later. At that time, I was 12 and thought everything worked like cotton undies or jeans. You just stepped in and pulled up. That theory was failing me, and the nylons were winning the battle when I lost my balance and pitched over the tiny bathroom of our trailer, smacking my face against the wall and getting the edge of the towel rod jammed into my hip. I said a word my ride wouldn't have approved of, and I glanced out the window to see her pulling in. I couldn't go without the hose because I didn't have any clean underwear. Dad was snoring away in his room and wouldn't have been any help anyway, not for pantyhose. So I kept pulling and pulling until I put my fingers right through the damn thing, sending a runner from hip to toenail. My ride tapped the horn once politely, and I said another bad word, although I admit that one might have been directed at her and not my clothing. At that point, I was crying with frustration, and I didn't know what to do. I was too embarrassed to waddle to the door and wave her on, so I couldn't get the damn things off either. So I just sat on the floor of the bathroom, defeated by a piece of women's clothing no one had ever taught me to put on, and I waited for my ride to give up and go away. She did eventually, but showed up again the next week. I'd been told often enough by both my dad and Jesus that lying was a bad thing, so I didn't have the nerve to tell her I'd been sick and wasn't about to admit the truth. So I did the easy thing. I covered my head with a blanket and I waited for her to go away. She was persistent, even coming up to the door by the end of the month, but going away in a hurry when Dad answered in his undies. Eventually, her honking on the horn made the neighbors in the next trailer take a pot shot at her with a .22 one morning, and that was the final straw. I never went to church again, and I burned those pantyhose in the barrel out in the back, first chance I got. I can't say I missed it, but there was something that stuck with me. They were pretty big on Psalm 23, the one about the Lord being your shepherd and making you lie down in green pastures and not being afraid to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which I admit would be a nice backup to have right about now. But my eyes always wandered over to Psalm 22 instead. While everyone else was reciting the reassuring stuff, I read about real shit going down, the way my life actually was. I can recite it even now. Be not far from me, I say, for trouble is near and there is no one to help. I don't know if I'm saying it because I think there might actually be a God, or listen if I'm just distracting myself, but I lick the possum grease off my lips, and I keep going. Roaring lions that tear their prey open their mouths wide against me. That hasn't quite happened yet, but at this rate, nothing would be surprising. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax, and it's melted within me. That last bit of oxy is still swimming in my veins, and while I don't think that's quite what the Bible was talking about when it comes to being poured out like water, it sure does feel similar. My voice quavers when I think about my heart melting within me and the sound Duke made when he took his pleasure with Natalie under the light of the moon. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death. The first bit couldn't be truer. I'm hoping the last is just symbolic. Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. What's left of my feet, anyway. I don't know how much more piercing I can take. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. That's truer than I care to admit, but if there were anyone to stare, my situation would be a lot better off, and I'd let them go ahead and gloat. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. Between all the strips torn off my shirt, I went ahead and did all the dividing myself, and anybody's welcome to my jeans if they can drive me to the hospital first. But you, Lord, be not far from me. You are strength. Come quickly to help me. The sooner, the better. That's it.